everyone. Welcome to night 23 of the Orphan's Tales Live reading series. Good to see people coming back in. Hi. It's a day of technology thwarting us here at the Briary. The Briary is what we call our house. It's the Queen of Fairyland's castle in the Fairyland series. I realize that I say that in my day-to-day conversation at the house. We talk about the Briary all the time, but when I say it to other people, they don't entirely know what I'm talking about. So, oh, thank you. You would, if I could turn the camera around, you could see my setup here. I'm in the corner of a tiny little antechamber in my house, with a fake flickering light that is balanced on top of a typewriter. It's all smoke and mirrors, but thank you for saying that it looks nice on camera. So the day is drawing to a close, and so it becomes the fairy tale hour. It is lovely to see everyone. Let's do our housekeeping real quick. As always, for legal purposes, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. It's a one-woman show. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com, along with a huge amount of other amazing music. You can follow me on Twitter at CatValenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon at CatValenti. There is a tip jar in my Instagram profile, as well as on my website at catherinemvalenti.com. These are absolutely free from me to you, but if you were moved to toss a coin to your witch, it would be greatly appreciated, as everything is very, very tight as we draw towards the end of the month here. Thank you so much to Julie, who tipped me last night. Julie, you are my hero. And anybody who does, I will thank you on the stream tomorrow night. Oh, and the two that I always forget are you can catch up with nights you might have missed on the archive at Cat Valenti Live, which is my YouTube channel. So that's YouTube.com/C/Cat Valenti Live. And you can ask questions after the stream, but I tend to just sign off if nobody asks questions quickly. So it's a good idea to think of what you're going to ask while I'm reading, so that you can get it in before I decide no one cares and I sign off. So all that said, my voice is a little bit better, so I think I will be a little less gravelly. Although I'm deeply irritated at the moment because I'm trying to play Animal Crossing and my technology won't allow me to. So I'm just trying to let that pass through me. Nintendo is the mind killer. And focus on the nice stories. I have no idea what happens in the book tonight. None at all. I don't really look over this beforehand, except to page through and see how long I think maybe we'll end up reading tonight. It just, I really just have no clue. Which means that we may hit some more gender stuff that I don't remember whether it's okay or not, having been written in 2002. I'm sorry if any of the things that I read last night didn't survive the test of time. It really was terminology and all of those kinds of things were not as established back then, and certainly I would probably not write these chapters the same way now. I don't know if we have any more of that coming or not, because I don't remember this book hardly at all. But I tried very hard, and I'm sure I messed up. Hopefully I get a B- instead of an F. That's all anyone can hope for 20 years after a book came out, to be perfectly honest. So let's proceed and hope for the best together. The Netweaver's Tale continued. I was soon quite friendly with the brothers, who, as it turned out, were literally brothers as well as fellow monks. They talked often of home, and of the other members of their litter who farmed their fields in peace and thought nothing of theology. Balthazar had the quickest tongue, often completing our sentences, as though he was impatient to hear the ends of them. Bartholomew was the most devout and kind. He shepherded me like a favorite lamb, teaching me from the Book of the Bough and the Book of Carrion, though never the meaning of the strange proverb uttered at the old home table. though he welcomed me to choose from any of the towers once we arrived. The variety of religion laid out before me would be as a table groaning with feast foods, he promised. Bags was our jester. He tickled me and taught me to wrestle, nipping me playfully if I let down my guard. It was not long before they were the only stars in my little sky. The four of us kept to the roads wherever they wound, and had food when it was plentiful, grapes and apples, and occasionally soft cheese from a passing cart, but never meat, of course. The Kanakephiloi assured me that they were excellent hunters, with strong, lean human legs and jaws that could snap a bird out of the air before the song died in its warbling throat. But they would never do so. It was with terrible sadness that Bags brought me a skinny hare one evening when the desert spread out around us like a fallen dress, embroidered with sagebrush and dusty pebbles. The poor creature had dropped dead of the heat. Bags did not want to waste the meat, and I was famished. I'd grown up devouring fox haunch and seal fat. The desert was unkind to my young limbs. With tears pooling in his yellow eyes, he laid the rabbit in my lap and closed its eyes as though the beast had been his brother. Death, he whispered, his throat squeezing out words like blood from a deep wound. We have seen so much death on this pilgrimage. Death common as coats hung up in a hall. 4 of us went out from the chrysanthemum tower, and 4 of us returned, but not the same 4. Do the gods mock us with numbers, tossing them at our hearts like jesters' balls? Do you know where we went when we had gone before? Where we had gone before we came to your village? What our mission was? Alinur is the city of light. Yes, oh yes, the moon and her dozen towers, like water on my tongue after years of thirst. But she asks so much of us, so much is required to keep that light burning gold and blue. He put his shaggy head in his hands, his sobs warped by the shape of his snout, and the sound of his snorting, snarling grief was terrible to hear. I can still smell his blood on my hands. I put aside the hair and tried to comfort him. Bags, who was always cheerful and full of jokes, my mother would have whipped me for repeating. Bags, who had become my favorite of all the brothers, wept in my arms like an orphan child. I could see the sullen fireflies of his brother's eyes gleaming some feet away, but I did not think they would come near. The Book of the Bow says, grief is a private sacrament. Give it not to others as though it were a gift. He should not have wept in my lap at all. His brothers would not shame him by witnessing his lapse. Bags looked up into my eyes and bit his tears into pieces. Everything that was done was necessary, little sister, so that the city might live. But I have tasted a yielding throat in my jaws, and I cannot tell. If one sins in order to preserve virtue, is this still sin? I am sorry, girl, you are not one of us. You will not be stained by my sorrow. You cannot be polluted by it. Let me give my grief to you, who are innocent of all these necessities, clean of all darkness. Let me tell you what my brothers and I did in the name of Alinur, the anointed city. Let me tell you of the 4th whose place you hold. The Assassin's Tale. What Bartholomew told you was true about Ragnhild the Black, who called herself Pappas 5 centuries ago and was slain by Gifron the Selfless. We know that tale better than any, for its continuation lay with us when we set out from the Salmon Gate, the gate which calls us home from our first steps into the wild, which reminds us of the river that gave us life, and to which we must return when our muzzles have grown bare. The Caliphate, now the 4th Caliphate, has always envied our autonomy and hated the scrap of parchment with the hoofprint of the first Caliph stamped firmly on its cracked surface, assuring our freedom unto the end of days. Our city is rich beyond the dreams of royal bursars. We are not tithed, we are not conscripted, we are beholden to no earthly law. After the death of Ragnhild, we had hoped that the time of their interference was finished, that their lesson had been etched deeply enough in blood that no children of our children would ever fear another apostasy. It was etched to the depth, it would seem, of 500 years, and no more. After the death of Gifron XII, Gifron has become a favorite name of the Pappas line, though the wolf of my heart mourns the loss stillborn of a long line of clear-eyed priestesses called Saveti. Our current blessed Pappas, Yashna the Wise, was confirmed with no great controversy and all due ceremony. The papal tower gleamed in its deep hues as always, and its silver glittered as it had the day nails first tasted the wood. There was no issue of succession. She was of the Tower of the Dead, which has given us many solemn and temperate Pappases. They are suited to it. The dead give nothing so much and so well as perspective. Yet the Caliphate chose this barely noticeable interregnum to interfere a second time, and under the rose dome of Shadukium, the apostate was born again like a black-mouthed calf. And worse, she took the name of her predecessor. Once more there was a Ragnhild with a diadem on her brow. She had sent men to retrieve the golden manacles that held the first false papas to the earth between cities, left there as a monument to remind the Caliphate that Alinor was never again to be superseded by a filthy banking metropolis. It was said that the new Ragnhild wore them day and night, the broken chains hanging delicately from her slender wrists, the ancient gold glowering against her skin. It was said that her hair was precisely that shade of gold, that her eyes were so black they seemed to have no pupils. It was said that she would not even call herself Ragnhild II, but believed herself to be that murdered Pappas reborn, and ever wore the deep violet gown in which those unfortunate bones had finally been interred. Its grave tatters showed her ghost-pale skin in many places, an indecency no true Pappas of the tower would ever have allowed. One late evening last summer, when the blue of the sky was deeper than any sea, my brothers and I were called from the singing blossoms of the chrysanthemum tower to the audience with Yashna. We went, I and my 3 brothers, for Barnabas was the 4th of our number, who stood before Yashna and heard her crow-song voice. His fur was perfectly black, without the patches of brown Bartholomew inherited from our strong-hipped mother. He was the strongest of us, and the youngest. The papal presence in simple grey robes and unadorned diadem soothed the image of the wraith Pappas from our troubled hearts. She is not a young woman, our mother Yashna. Her deep brown skin is folded and creased as a beloved book. When she reached out her hand to touch our bent and reverent heads, her palm was warm and dry as a desert stone after twilight has fallen. My sons, listen well to me, for our city is once again besieged. I am not a Gifron. At this she smiled, a weary smile that turned up the corners of her mouth like the horns of the moon. I am not even a Sarati. There is nothing in my body to give to Alinor. I am a crone. I accept this. I cannot lead an army against Shadukium. Even if I could ride at its head, we have been so long at peace, I fear the Dragi are not what they once were. They train and pray and know nothing of true war. No, this time we cannot simply crush the Black Pappas under the weight of our towers. It is time for stealth and for cunning. These things I can give with both hands. I have chosen you because you will not be suspected. The Scarlet Hoods have ever prohibited violence of any kind, and no one would think to question your tranquil spirits. Nevertheless, I must ask you to break your vows, as Immaculate Saveti once did, in service of the lifeblood of the 12 towers. I am sending you from the river and familiar waters. I am sending you from the 16th pointed chrysanthemum. You must go east and kill the Black Pappas. Oh, sister, I would like to tell you we were shocked, that we agreed only out of duty, but the truth is, words such as kill had little meaning for us who had grown up through the cycles of the opening and closing of flowers, who had never eaten animal flesh or struck another creature in anger. We agreed because it was Yashna who asked it. We agreed because it was Yashna who told us we would be forgiven, because we wanted to wear the holy secret name of Saveti sewn into our chests, because we wanted to be the saviors of our city, which was the deepest heart of our hearts. We thought nothing of Ragnhild and nothing of the task. We eagerly swore ourselves and kissed her withered hand, which smelled so sweetly of sandalwood and rustling scrolls. There was no shadow of guilt in us as we departed, as we heard the soprano echo of the salmon gate closing behind us. It was not so far as we had imagined from Alinor to Shadukium. It seems, when you rest in the arms of the dreaming city, that all things outside her walls belong to another universe, impossible to reach by the mere motion of one foot before the other. The land between the 2 cities is pleasant. How we joked and bounded across those well-tilled fields. How we gorged ourselves on wild strawberries and oranges like little flames flashing in the morning fog. Barnabas especially reveled in the open pit spaces, cavorting ahead of us on his quick, flat feet. "Come on," he cried. "There's no reason not to enjoy ourselves along the way, even if the task ahead is dreary and dire. The bough says, 'Heed not the dark before, behind, and beside. Dwell always in the light of the open heart.' The blueberries are so sweet on the road at first light. Bartholomew was his usual self, staring fretfully at the night stars. Balthazar allowed Barnabas to cheer him, and the two played and wrestled together beside our nightly fires. How cordially we were received at the sun-dappled wall of Shadukium. How brightly her diamond turrets glittered against the great wicker dome of the arches over the city, alive with a thick latticework of roses trailing over the slick surface, obscenely red, dotted with the most delicate of pinks and whites. The guards let us enter without question, and our appointment with the Papist was terribly difficult to bite off all our accustomed prefixes and not call her black or false or apostate. But we wrangled our words into a genial array. It was arranged smoothly and with great courtesy. Of course they beamed. The Papist welcomes all her sons and daughters to her bosom, they assured us. She yearns to bring her family together under the rose dome and heal the breaches between them, they said. Her only concern is for their souls. They bowed and scraped. How easy it was to hate her, little sister. We needed to smuggle no weapons into her vaulted hall. Our daggers were born in plain view, the sharp teeth of our hunter heritage, which had known no flesh but that of apples and peaches. It seemed only a moment cavorting through orchards, and we were here, ushered into her private antechamber, kneeling before her strange throne, which seemed to be made of the same roses that covered the city dome, and yet these were alive and writhed against her body with a lascivious familiarity. Her face was obscured by her hair as we knelt. She did not greet us or ask us to rise, the long white gold length of it falling over her cheeks like a nun's veil. On her wrists were the golden manacles, the chains idly brushing her bared knees. The famous violet gown showed much of her pale body. The low rim of her right breast was bare. The patches of her hips and belly gleamed balefully from the ancient fabric. I wonder, sister, if it was easier, because she looked so precisely like the ghoul of which we had been warned. If she had appeared without those oft-rumored accoutrements, might we have been moved by that beauty? Might we have hesitated? But she was the very image of herself, unmistakable and pure. "Welcome home, O errant sons," she said, her voice deep and cloying as a many-storied honeycomb. She did not lift her head. "The house is forever strengthened when all its children return to hearth. It warms me to receive you." "We are honored, mother." Barnabas spat the honorific at her, the taste of it surely bitter as lime leaves in his mouth. "Yashna has sent us with missives of peace." She raised her eyes suddenly, their black lights flaring like sparks from an ancient anvil. "Yashna has sent you to kill me, to rid your pestilential city of an inconvenient woman. If my attendants are fools leaping to the hope that Alinor will accept us, do not make the mistake of looking for me to leap with them. I am Ragnhild. I have felt the press of Alinor's hand before." We exchanged nervous looks. Bartholomew licked his dark jaw. If she truly was mad enough to believe herself the dead apostate reborn, perhaps death would be a mercy. I tried to sound the depths of her delusion, murmuring, "I know that your predecessor suffered greatly after the war." "No, my son, not she. I lay on the rocks as the sun gnawed at my flesh. I pleaded for my life with the useless stump of a tongue. I watched your precious Sveti close up my severed breast in a silver box, and I listened to the soldiers praise her false name, Gifran, Gifran, the whore who betrayed her god for power. This body is new, but I am Ragnhild, first of my name, and I am the plague which will burn through the marrow of the anointed city. Crowds will turn east to Shadukium to look upon the faces of the gods. They will bow to the rose dome in wonder and awe. The ruins of your corrupt towers will become a curiosity, where children are brought to tell the tale of that decadent and wasteful clutch of nearsighted monks, and how my purifying vengeance brought them low. I will not even be slowed by your lumpish, deformed bodies crunching under my feet. Yashna is a senile, drooling serving wench, and her lapdogs are nothing to me. You must know, Bartholomew said slowly, that the purifying vengeance is not yours, but the Caliph's. He is using you to take the wealth of our city for his own. Why do you think he has installed you so near the treasuries, the granaries, the little men counting diamonds in darkened rooms? What has Shadukium ever been but a bank vault, a plate for the Caliph to feed from? If you are truly Ragnhild, if you have such power, you must know that the blame lies with the Caliphate and their greed. Why not loose your hatred upon he who led you like a little calf to the broad-faced butcher? What offense has Alinor given, save that we have endured in peace and prosperity, that we have worshipped our gods with piety, that we have built beauty into a barren world? Yet the Caliph has used you like a painted whore, dressing you up in a corpse's clothes, and reaching out with your hand to clutch handfuls of Nurian gold. The Caliph is a dog licking himself on a tin chair, she snapped. The first time I was a fool. He whispered in my ear I could be holy. I could wash my skin in crushed sapphires. He kissed my throat and promised to make me the queen of heaven. This time, I came to Shadukian with him crawling before me on a silken leash. The Tale of the Black Pappus. Actually, I think we might have to wait until next week for that. It goes on quite a ways. So I think that we'll hold on to that for next week. It starts kind of a whole cycle with Ragnhild's story. Yeah, so we're definitely entering into a part of the story, part of the book that's very much about alternating stories, points of view, so that who the villain is and isn't goes back and forth. I mean, that's sort of one of the things about all of these, that everything is about point of view and how it's being perceived. So that whether or not what happened to the Pappus in Alinor is a positive thing or a negative thing, whether it's considered a holy sacrifice or her betraying her identity for power. All of these things are meant to be ambiguous in the Orphan's tales. No one is really all good or all bad in these stories, and Ragnhild's story is definitely one that puts a fine point on that. So someone's asking, are the dog-headed people in red cloaks a reference to something? You mentioned there was a reference to other stories. Confess if that one's going over my head. So, sort of. I mean, the red cloak is a Red Riding Hood reference, but the kind of Cephaloi are a real ancient, an ancient Greek mythical beast. And you can find them in more or less any medieval bestiary. Them being vegetarian comes from me. That's not a thing. There's not really very many stories about them. They turn up in Prester John's kingdom. The word just means dog head. That's it. Kinos and Cephaloi, dog heads. It's plural. You don't need to know it's plural. But a lot of beasts in these bestiaries, there's really not. Some of them have really cool attributes and stories, and some of them really don't. Just have what they are, and then we move right along. So it depends, and the kind of Cephaloi don't really have a whole lot going on. They do turn up. I think they're in Herodotus too. They turn up here and there, but they never. They don't have a lot of sort of species characteristics other than the dog head thing. They're all good boys, though. Does anyone else have any questions? You play the Jeopardy theme. Yeah, so again, I don't really remember what's coming up with the Black Pappus. I do remember that she's one of my favorite characters, and I do remember that a lot of people have talked to me about her after the book, so presumably it's a good part. Let's hope. Again, I saw Tempest make note of 20 years before. 20 years since I wrote it. I wrote it when I was 22. So 18 years since I wrote it. It's only been 14 since the first one came out. But yeah, it's definitely delving back into and not just another sort of time and place, but like I had just graduated from college. I was barely online in any significant way. I didn't even have a LiveJournal account when I first started this book. It was just so far back. Yeah, this is definitely where things start to get creepy, and it's reanimated corpses and necromancers, and there's a lot of dead people imagery and religious wars and arguing about religious texts and stuff like that. It definitely gets pretty dark here, although not. The City of Marrow is in the second book, and I think that's about as dark as it gets. Seven's story and the City of Marrow. Oh, you got a bee tattoo? That's so awesome. Oh, that's so cool. You know, the funny thing is I hate insects. I'm so afraid of insects, and like I'm not very good with bees either. And I wrote this book, Palimpsest, which has quite creative bugs in them, and so I have signed myself up for a lifetime of bug presents. Have I had the chance to play any RPGs recently? No, not really. I was playing Witcher 3 for a while, and I kind of fell off of that. And it's one of those things, like, and I've been playing Breath of the Wild a little bit too, which is it's an action RPG. But with the problem with RPGs is if you don't play them steadily all the way through, then you get to this point where you're like, oh, I'm gonna go play that game, and then you have no idea where you were or what you were supposed to be doing, or like how any of your armor is holding up, or just who you are in this game, and then it starts to like feel intimidating to get back to playing that game when you've been away for so long. So no, I have not been playing either of the ones that I've made progress on of late. Yeah, everyone loves a good religious war, especially when it's not our religion. And that's the thing, you know, the Orphan does not take place in our world. You know, you may have caught the reference to the hoof print of the caliph. Well, I assure you that no caliphs in our world have ever had a hoof. This is not our universe, and the people in it do not have the same assumptions that we do, and do not have the same history or future as us. It definitely takes place in its own universe. This is I don't actually do very many secondary world fantasies, but it is a secondary world fantasy. I guess the one that I'm doing right now is both the writing right now is both a secondary world and a portal. So within that secondary world, they go to an even more magical place. I hope you get your Switch working. I really do. And I know Animal Crossing is not intimidating. I want to play with my friends. I don't know why it's being so mean to me. And of course, right now you can't get anything repaired, and you can't even raise anybody on tech support. So essentially, if I can't get it, when I say I mean Heath. If Heath can't get it working, then essentially it's bricked until quarantine's over, at which point no one's gonna be playing Animal Crossing anymore. So I'm really glad I just spent that money on Animal Crossing. I was like, it's a birthday present to myself, because my birthday's in like a week and a half.
It still doesn't work.
No. So yeah, apparently it's bricked. What a beautiful, perfect evening. Justified it as a birthday present, and now it's just nothing. Good job, self. All right. Let's do our outro stuff for legal reasons. This is not an audiobook. This is a play. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can catch up with the archive on my YouTube channel, which is called Cat Valenti Live. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Cat Valenti. There is a tip jar in my Instagram profile and one on my website at catherinemvalenti.com. Man, I have to say my name so many times in this part. These are absolutely free, but if you are moved to contribute to the tip jar, I will love you forever, because times are very tight. And nobody's paying their invoices. So I will thank you by name on the next stream if you do, and I will see you guys tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel. Any gender stuff that might not have held up here, which I haven't noticed, would be redeemed by Space Opera. I do really appreciate that. I'm very, I care so much. I care about representation. I care about gender issues. I'm a queer woman. Like, this all matters to me a huge amount. And so when I look back on my younger work, I want it to hold up. But I'm not arrogant enough to think that after 18 years, everything I thought when I was 22 is going to be perfectly woke. It's not. I'm going to have made mistakes. I probably already have by using the word hermaphrodite, which I always meant to be in the classical sense of it, in which it's a very positive word. But I understand it's not for a lot of people. But again, these are secondary world. These are not necessarily characters that have perfectly correct ideas. But I don't want to defend it. If you are... if you didn't like something I did in this book, that's okay. It is totally within your rights to not like it. And I'm fine with that. I wish that I had done it in a way that you did like. I'm not fine with having made you uncomfortable, but I'm fine with you not having a positive opinion of it. That's okay. That's what art is. You know, not everybody agrees on it. And I hope I do better now. But you know, I was a kid. I was doing my very best. We all do our best. We all mess up, and we all move on and try to do better in the future. So I hope that's the trajectory that we're looking at, and I hope that again, like I said in the beginning, I hope it's a B- and not an F. Thank you all so much for coming and watching this. Hi, Patricia, and I will see you all on the flip side. Bye, guys. Have a lovely evening.